Wouldn't it be nice if diabetes was optional? And the bottom line and the good news is that it is totally optional. What it takes is simply getting some understanding of what the situation is and what you can do. So, my goal for you today is very straightforward. I want you to become the informed boss of your own healthcare decisions. Basically, so many people have the misconception that they have no control over their health, over their life, and they think it's all up to their physician in terms of whether they live or die and whether they feel healthy or not. It's important to understand, though, most physicians are really good, well meaning people. But having been in medicine for over 40 years, it was a shock to me when I realized that virtually all of my continuing medical education that I received in conferences and journals, wherever, was really just slick advertising by the drug companies masquerading as science. So all that most doctors know about is the hammer in the toolkit. That would be the medications and not even the cheap medications. We just are taught about the most expensive new patentable and profitable medication. So when you ask a doctor about how about this herb or this lifestyle change or whatever, and you get a blank look back, that's simply because we're not trained in anything besides, well, basically writing for drugs. So, what I want you to do is to learn today how to use the tools that your doctor is giving you, but to realize even though they have the hammer and the toolkit, you got the whole rest of the toolkit available to you. And when you know how to use it, you will find that truly diabetes is optional. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to teach you today what diabetes is, what causes it, and then give you understanding of why it used to be very rare and how you can make it go away. We're going to talk about a number of herbal and natural treatments, including one of my favorites for diabetes, which is called Hintonia latiflora. So first, you may hear about people talking about type 1, type 2, or even type 3 diabetes. And type 1 diabetes is childhood diabetes. It's an autoimmune disease, uh, hits usually in childhood again. And that's when the body's immune system attacks the insulin making cells in the body and destroys them. So that's an illness of not being able to make insulin. Um, for those listening today, if you do have type 1 diabetes, I'm going to note there's some fascinating research using BCG vaccine. That's actually the tuberculosis vaccine. Now, again, we know that a lot of vaccinations are grossly overdone, but some of them do have their benefits. And that's one that's really worth looking at for childhood diabetes. And in type 1 diabetes, insulin is a godsend and a lifesaver. But most, if not all of you, have adult onset diabetes. This is called type 2 diabetes. Um, this is basically comes from the modern lifestyle. It's called a mismatch disease where our genetics don't match the rapid changes in our environments. What you'll find is that your blood sugar levels are high, and that the insulin levels actually are very high, not low, they're high. Um, and type 2 diabetes is quite preventable and reversible. So, again, with the tools and the toolkit we're going to give you today, you will be able to make your diabetes get much better and often go away. So, let's start with an important understanding. Uh, we're looking at about one third of Americans are predicted to get diabetes, um, given the current Western diet and lifestyle. But until we took on the Western diet and lifestyle, adult diabetes used to be extraordinarily rare. Most physicians might not see anybody with diabetes in their entire lifetimes. Now, it's one of the most common illnesses there is. But that it used to be very rare doesn't mean that this is written in stone in our genetic code. It means quite the opposite. So let's start with insulin. Our body is made up of a bunch of cells. You can think of them as little furnaces that use sugar for energy. But the sugar has to be released very slowly in very tiny amounts so the cells can take them up. Otherwise, some of you may have had the experience where you did what's called flooding the motor in the car, or pushing down on the gas too much even before you started the car. Too much gasoline was getting to the motor and it just totally shut off and it wouldn't work. And that's kind of what insulin resistance is, where so much sugar is going to the cells that they actually have to shut down so they don't get flooded. So insulin is like the key that opens the door into your cellular furnaces so it can burn sugar for fuel. And basically that key is being refused by the cells because there's actually too much sugar going around in the body. So what happens over time as we put on weight and we have trouble with 140 pounds of sugar added to our diet each year and the rest is that the cells become deaf to insulin. But what happens? Meanwhile, you can't open the doors into the cellular furnaces to get sugar from the blood into the furnace where it can be burned for energy. So those cells become energy starved. And they send out a message to the body that we're starving. So your body actually makes more sugar and more insulin. These high insulin levels then cause you to turn sugar into fat. When you have very high insulin, insulin is like the traffic cop. When it's working well, it directs traffic of sugar into the cells to be burned for energy. But when it gets too high, it says, whoa, we have a traffic overload, takes all that sugar and sends it straight to your fat cells and turns it into fat. This is why you'll see that spare tire classically around the middle in people, especially men with diabetes and insulin resistance. So you have sugar building up in your blood. It can't get into the cells. The cells are starved. They call for more. The sugar builds up, and you get this cycle that spirals out of control. That's what diabetes is. So let's take a look at why we're having so much diabetes. And it's not rocket science. The research has shown, and this is a very nice um, a book actually by the Harvard University Press on medical anthropology. They found that, as you mentioned, before the Western diet is introduced, many illnesses, if not most illnesses on life, are very, very rare, including diabetes. We then, over the last century, have started adding 140 pounds of sugar per person per year into the diet and food processing. For many people, that's essentially our weight in added sugar. I mean, that's gross. That's 18% of our calories, and that triggers the cells to have to become deaf to insulin or insulin resistant. So, that's really a horrible thing. So let's take a look. And I know we've talked about it a little bit, but the concept of insulin resistance is important enough. I want to go through it a little bit more. Again, as you mentioned, insulin is the key that opens the furnace, lets the sugar get into the cells to be burned for energy. When sugar levels are too much outside, the cells become deaf to the insulin, so this sugar builds up in the blood, can't get into the cells to be burnt, and that sugar then gets directed into fat, which causes more insulin resistance and weight gain. So let's take a look. We're talking about why we have this epidemic of type 2 diabetes. And there are a number of reasons. Number one, we talked about the high sugar, but also not enough fiber in the diet plays a major role. Um, the insulin sensitivity causes obesity. And isn't it horrible? I mean, it's just abusive how in our modern society we have all these factors in our environment that force people to become obese no matter what they do. And then we treat it like it's a character deficit. And how dare they? It's totally insane. This is the obesity as a result of the modern diet and chemicals in the environment. That's why some people can eat nothing and just balloon up. And some of the things we'll talk about today will help with that because the weight can go down too. Genetics plays a modest role. Vitamin D deficiency. How many of you have heard the advice to avoid sunshine? That's insane. Sunshine is healthy. The proper advice is avoid sunburn, not sunshine. So you want to get out in the sunshine. You don't want to slather yourself with suntan lotion. But if you're going to burn, if you're going to be out on the beach all day, then put on the suntan lotion. Vitamin D is a critical hormone for regulating blood sugar. Magnesium deficiency is also a major player. The average diet before food processing has 600 milligrams of magnesium. After food processing, there's only about 245 to 275 milligrams left. This magnesium deficiency has been shown to be a potent trigger for diabetes. Yet most doctors have never been taught the research or shown the research about vitamin D and magnesium because it's just so dang cheap. Nobody's going to pay. If you have a new medication you're coming out with, it's important to understand the drug companies spend $70 million per year per medication advertising to physicians and the public. Who's going to spend that to say, hey, vitamin D and magnesium are critical to avoid and improve diabetes? It's not going to happen. So, another critical thing would be another hormone, in addition to vitamin D, would be testosterone. Low testosterone in men, even if it's in the normal range, important to understand with blood tests. And I'm going to tell you a secret that your doctor doesn't know, which is what the normal range means on your blood test. It's going to be an eye opener for you. This is a concept that boggles my mind. All the normal range means is to take 100 people, the 95 in the middle are defined as normal, and the highest and lowest 2.5% are abnormal. It's called two standard deviations. Um, Most doctors think that the normal range comes from a group of elderly physicians with long white beards and benevolent smiles and wisdom who come and go through and say, if it's in this normal range, it must be fine. Eh. That's just not the situation. They take 100 pre-filled and 95 in the middle. So, an analogy that I gave Dr. Oz that he likes to run with, he's a friend and he's very good, by the way, despite Monsanto going after him because he said things that ticked him off. Um, but say you want a normal range for shoe sizes, and you would take 100 people, the normal range would be size 6 to 13. Now, say you're a 250 pound, 6'8" Texan, and you got your shoes mixed up and you're wearing a size 6, and you go to the shoe doctor, and you say the shoe's too small. And the doctor says, no, it's in the normal range. Nothing wrong with your shoe, sir. And you say, I can't get my toe in the damn thing. And the doctor looks at you like you're crazy. It's in the normal range. And the same applies for testosterone levels. If you're in the lowest third, not the lowest 2%, but the lowest third of the normal range, low testosterone can be contributing to diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. Uh, in women, it's the opposite. High testosterone, such as PCOS or other conditions, can contribute to diabetes. So, in those taking testosterone supplementation, in men that will usually decrease diabetes using the bioidentical testosterone, not the bodybuilder stuff. And in women, um, if they're diabetic, they want to either avoid or go with much lower doses of the testosterone in their hormone replacement cream. So when you talk about refined carbohydrates, is it white? Basically white sugar, white flour, white rice, white bread, and things like frosted flakes. And you see the pictures here. There's all kinds of things that where the food processors are slipping sugar into our diet to fool our taste buds and get us, frankly, addicted. Um, Now, if you want to know how much sugar, here's another little trick that's going to be really helpful. Take a piece of paper and write this down. When you look at a box, you look at the frosted flakes, for example. Everything on the box is an advertising. Which is another way of saying basically just made up nonsense, except for a little area on the box called the nutrition panel. And you'll see on that nutrition panel, it looks like it's written in kind of Greek. It's like grams of this and what the hell do I do with that? You look at sugar and you see how many grams of sugar. Take that grams of sugar number and divide it by 4, and that will tell you how many teaspoons of sugar there are per ounce. It's that simple. Divide grams of sugar by 4, see how many teaspoons, and your gut feeling will tell you whether you want to gag and put the thing right back on the shelf or whether it's reasonable. And that's the simplest way to do it. So the that simple trick, because I don't want people spending a lifetime counting grams of sugar all day. That's annoying. Just know that trick, divide grams of sugar by 4, and then decide whether you want to eat that or not. So the white flour overall is really nasty for our body. And I'm not saying you can't ever have a pizza with white flour. That's really okay. But overall, you want to have things that are foods that are whole grains, things along those lines. The white flour, white rice, refined carbohydrates, they're digested very quickly, give a quick spike in blood sugar after you eat. And your body is used to when it sees that kind of a high spike in blood sugar, it's used to that food being slowly digested and released over 3 hours. So it makes a massive amount of insulin. So your sugar spikes and makes the insulin, then it drops your blood sugar and you get hypoglycemic. So for those of you who get irritable when hungry, what the candy bar advertisers have cynically called hangry. And I say cynically because the worst thing you can do when you have low blood sugar and are hangry is to eat a candy bar. You'll feel better for a half hour, and then you will basically be the devil from hell as your mood shift all over the place. Um, but again, refined carbs are nasty. They have no fiber. They're digested too quickly. Um, so how is your doctor going to go ahead and check to see if you have uh, too high of a blood sugar, diabetes? Classically, they would just do a snapshot. They would check a fasting blood sugar, and they would say it should be under 100. But that's not really very reliable. A much better test is called the A1C or hemoglobin A1C or glycosylated hemoglobin. Three names for the same test. Uh, this basically gives you a snapshot of what's been going on with your blood sugar over about the last 6 weeks. It's kind of like an average. So that's the best test, in my humble opinion, for monitoring diabetes and blood sugar control. You want the glycosylated hemoglobin or the hemoglobin A1C to be about 5.4. That's the sweet spot for people. Excuse me. I think I'm coughing because the slide is wrong. Uh, the it says 5 to 6 is excellent. No, five anything under 5.6 is okay, and 5.4 is excellent. Once you're getting up about 6 on your glycosylated hemoglobin, you're getting prediabetes. Uh, from 7 to 8, that's diabetes, but you're having pretty good or fair diabetes control. And then once you're getting 9 or higher, that's the red zone for glycosylated hemoglobin. Your blood sugar is out of control, and you got to get right on that to bring that back down. Why is this important? Even a 1% decrease in glycosylated hemoglobin results in a 19% decrease in cataract risk, 16% lower risk of heart failure, 43% less risk of losing a leg or death from peripheral vascular disease. And basically, it's the difference between being diabetic or not. Because if you go from 7 to 6, you're not diabetic, you're prediabetes. You go a little bit 5.5, you're totally normal and healthy without. Now, many of you have also noticed that not just do you have diabetes, but what a coincidence. Your doctor said, oh, and here's another medicine for high blood pressure. Oh, and here's another medicine for high cholesterol. And you're thinking, wow, why am I getting all of these different diseases? And the reason is that these are not separate illnesses. They're all the same thing called metabolic syndrome. All of these come from insulin resistance. So high blood pressure, high cholesterol and blood fats, um, the little testosterone in men, having the spare tire around the abdomen in men, prediabetes or diabetes. all of this is insulin resistance. All of this is the effect of our modern diet, decreased exercise, decreased sunshine, a host of different things that we've talked about. So here's the thing. Even though I'm not against all blood sugar or diabetes medicines, even though most of them are crazy, but you can, in most cases, lower your glycosylated hemoglobin without medication. Think about that a moment. You can go ahead and make your diabetes go away, often without medication. Does that concept surprise you? Because I'm betting your doctor didn't tell you that, but this is what the research shows. Um, I'm going to start with an herb called Hintonia latiflora. Uh, this is a remarkable herb. It's native to Mexico and Central America. It's been researched for over 60 years now in Germany as a clinically proven treatment for diabetes, and it can be helpful both for early diabetes, prediabetes, and also full-blown diabetes. So this is one that I recommend for everybody with diabetes. So we'll talk about that, and we're going to talk about some other things too. So Hintonia decreases glycosylated hemoglobin an average of 10%. So most people will go from say a 7 to about a 6. Fasting blood sugar decreased 23%, and the complications of diabetes decreased 73%. We have about 10 studies now looking at Hintonia with diabetes. And I'm going to tell you the odds are that unless you have a holistic doctor, they have not seen any of those studies. Now, the interesting thing, too, at the end of the study, about half of the people, and you want to give it 6 months to see the full effect, but about half the people had reduced or eliminated the need for diabetes medications at all, which is pretty remarkable for a single herb. So let's take a look at blood sugar levels. This is one of the 10 studies, 32 people with type 2 diabetes who had trouble containing and controlling their blood sugar, even with a really good diet. So they've already gone through the first phases of treatment, which is fix the diet. And what they found, the average glycosylated hemoglobin was about 7.5 when they started, and the average was 6.7. So many of these people were not even diabetic anymore by the end of the study with no medication. And this is what the research shows. So how does it work? Well, there are two main ways that Hintonia latiflora works. One is it makes a special flavonoid, coutragenin, which is a polyphenol. It's found in bark extracts that are unique to Hintonia, and it results in a lot of the direct blood sugar lowering effects. The other thing is that Hintonia also has an enzyme inhibitor that slows the breakdown of the carbohydrates. Remember, we talked about when you have white flour and white bread and all that kind of stuff, it gets digested very quickly because there's nothing in it besides carb, and it goes and spikes the blood sugar. This slows its breakdown, so you get a slow, steady release of blood sugar instead of a spike with a massive insulin release. Now, the good news with that, it hasn't been studied for weight loss, but in my experience, most things that slow the digestion of carbohydrates so you don't get the insulin spike also help people to lose weight. So it's funny, in medications, we talk about what are the side effects. In herbal remedies, what we look at instead of side effects usually are side benefits. So one of the side benefits of Hintonia is that it may help with weight loss. Now, here's a little quote from the president of the International Diabetes Association that I want you to take a look at for a moment. Okay, he was the lead author on one of the studies using Hintonia for type 2. Uh, and what he stated, quote, not only because of the improved blood sugar control, but also because of its effectiveness in lowering cholesterol and other elements of metabolic syndrome that can lead to type 2 diabetes, he highly recommended this as a first line treatment for diabetes. He's the president of the International Diabetes Foundation. This is a major, major herb and herbal breakthrough for diabetes. So, looking at Hintonia, it's very, very safe. Been studied for over 60 years. We don't really see any problems with it. No side effects that were worrisome were seen. The sooner it's used, the better it works. So it's nice to catch diabetes early, and well, the blood sugar is mild to moderate, but it will help regardless of the situation. But the higher the blood sugar, the more tools you want to bring to bear to bring it down. It is very safe to use in combination with insulin, oral diabetic medications, but let your doctor know. And the dose is 20 milligrams of the polyphenols from the Hintonia, 1 to 3 times a day. Um, and here's the thing. So you have a piece of paper and pen. Here's what I want you to write. You want to start with a multivitamin that has 150 to 200 milligrams of magnesium and 400 to 1,000 units of vitamin D. You want to avoid the multivitamin that has higher than 50 milligrams of vitamin B6 unless it's pyridoxal 5 phosphate form, which is the form that is recommended, because otherwise it can aggravate the risk of diabetic neuropathy. So start with a good multivitamin. You take the Hintonia, you add that in. And then I would take an herb called Boswellia, 200 to 500 milligrams 3 times a day, and you add that in. You do this combination, and then you cut down the white flour, switch to whole grains when it's convenient. Like I say, you're out for pizza, enjoy yourself. But in general, get whole grain bread, whole grain products, whole grains in general. Switch more to a bit of a higher protein. A ketogenic diet is very, very healthy here. So you want to do these simple things, um, and get some sunshine while you're at it, and exercise. And make sure your testosterone levels are optimized. These simple things are a recipe for making your diabetes go away. Now, I want to look at one other tool that also can be very helpful for people with diabetes. Very reasonable and good thing to add in. This would be grape seed extract, or the OPCs from grape seed. Uh, this is a source of oligomeric proanthocyanidins. No, there won't be a test on that, so don't worry about it. But it basically has compounds that are antibacterial, antiviral, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, vasodilatory, which means it helps your circulation. That's pretty good. you know, um, we're talking about side benefits instead of side effects, and it also inhibits the enzymes that break down the carbs, so like we talked about with the Hintonia, and things that slow the digestion of carbs tend to contribute to weight loss. Um, so if you take a look, the grapeseed extract um, lowers blood sugar. Now, don't confuse it with grapefruit seed, and there's all these others. It's grape seed extract. And in a study looking at animal models of diabetes, what we saw was this insanely dramatic drop in blood sugar. It went from about 440 um, down to 100, which is remarkable. Now, I'm still waiting for these studies to be done in humans, but the animal studies are remarkable enough. And the grapeseed extract is very safe and has multiple other health benefits. That it's very reasonable to go ahead and use that as well as part of the program to help bring your blood sugars back down to normal. So if you take a look, the grapeseed extract blunts the spikes in blood sugar. Remember, it slows absorption of the carbs. So, and this is human studies, so they are seeing that it has that effect that generally will contribute to weight loss and better blood sugar control. But there's a big problem. Uh, you got to know what you're getting and where you're getting it from. There are a lot of fake or counterfeit grapeseed products because the good quality OPCs from grapeseed are quite expensive for manufacturers to buy. So a recent study looked at a bunch of different grapeseed products and found that they're actually made from peanut skins instead. Um, and even if they have no OPCs, they can be sold as grapeseed extract. So you want to look for OPC on the label and make sure that it has that. And you're looking about 400 milligrams for basic support, but you can go as high as 1,200 milligrams a day for optimal support. Now, so we've talked about some of the natural supplements. Again, a good multi with a magnesium and D, Hintonia, latiflora, berberine, 200 to 500 milligrams 3 times a day, the grapeseed extract with OPCs. You want to go ahead and get those things in. You want to cut down the white flour and carbs. And let's take a look at the diet a little bit further because many of us, it's kind of have a sweet tooth. It's kind of like, we can all get together in Sweet Tooth Anonymous, and I raise my hand and go, "Hi, I'm Jacob, and I love chocolate, and I've got my sweet tooth." And everybody will say, "Hi, Jacob," Um, but pleasure is good, and it's a funny thing in our society. We live in a society um, where, well, let me give some context. If you look back, hundreds of years ago, when England was sending people out to sea, it took the criminals and anybody who was basically, arrested of a crime, and they sent them to Australia. And then it took the Puritans, which is a group of people who said that anything pleasurable is the devil, and God's going to kill you and send you to hell if you enjoy anything in your life. And they were so annoying, they put them on ships and sent them to America. And I think Australians are more fun, maybe way sometimes. But can you imagine? Just think about that concept. And this is something that we still hold over in our life, that anything that feels good is bad for us. Can you take a moment and realize just how utterly insane that is? Let's look at it from a couple perspectives. If you're looking at it from a perspective of evolution, the body would evolve. The things that are enjoyable are things that the body wants that give a survival benefit. So, from an evolutionary viewpoint, it's insane. And if you think of it from a divine thing, where God made us as children and then put us in a world where everything that felt good is bad for us, what kind of an insane parent would do that? I mean, it's nuts. Can you imagine doing that with your kids? No. This is a myth. The myth that things that feel good are bad for you. It's an utter myth. I enjoy my sweet tooth, and I'm proud of it. But I'm not going to let my body be fooled by 140 pounds of sugar that food processors put in to try to trick our body and trigger diabetes. So what am I going to do? I enjoy stevia. There are a host of different kinds of stevias out there. Many of them used to be bitter. Most of them have learned they how to filter it, so they got past it. But there are many ones that I find good. Stevia is a good, healthy sweetener. In fact, the whole stevias have been found to even help things like Lyme disease, help prevent those and decrease them. I tend to, be more cautious with the artificial sweeteners. I think the most toxic one is the blue packet, and um, that's a whole other story in terms of how that got approved. But that's I mean, for most people, it's okay here and there, and it's fine. But I think the pink packet, well, the green packet with the stevia is the healthiest. The pink packet, I think, is the safest of the artificial ones. Yellow is in between, and the blue is most toxic. Now, dark chocolate, even any chocolate, is actually a health food. Huh? Did you just hear me right? Chocolate is a health food? Absolutely so. You know that cholesterol medicine the doctor is pushing on you? That's associated with a maybe 2 to 10% lower risk of dying from heart attack. Eating a small square of dark chocolate or even regular chocolate each day is associated with a 45% lower risk of dying of heart attack. Now, more is not better because it's not a low calorie and it's not a low sugar food. You can get chocolates. Lily's makes a whole line of sugar free chocolates that you can get easily in health food stores that taste really good. And then there's no sugar in it. then it's just the calories, and you still get all the benefits of the chocolate. So less than an ounce a day. Darker is better. I go with the sugar-free myself, like the lilies. Or there's stevia in the morning. I'll go ahead and get chocolate stevias. There's chocolate raspberry ones. Stevia Select makes a very good one that are awesome. And my morning coffee tastes like this confection. No sugar, no calories, all natural and delicious. So enjoy your pleasures, but do it safely and healthfully. One or two fruits a day are fine, but in general, go with healthy, unprocessed foods like meat and fish, or eggs, vegetable, nuts, and berries. You notice I have eggs in here. Eggs are very healthy. Eggs do not raise cholesterol. There have been over a dozen studies giving 6 eggs a day for 6 weeks. And you know what effect it has on cholesterol? None. That is a medical myth. Eggs are a very healthy food. And if you're looking for probably the best single diet, I think, or one of the best diets for uh, people with diabetes would be the ketogenic diets. The keto diets can be very, very good. So go ahead and enjoy those. And the ketogenic diets are a very healthy and good way to lose weight as well. So, for more information, many of you may have a sugar addiction. And if I just tell you to stop sugar, that's like telling a junkie to stop doing heroin. Ain't going to happen. Because you need to understand what is driving your sugar cravings. And there are four main types of sugar cravings. And you can learn about it in my earlier book, The Complete Guide to Beating Sugar Addiction. But I'm going to tell you what's in the book, and you don't even have to buy it. Four simple questions will tell you what kind of sugar addict you are. Number one, do you reach for sugar when you're tired? You're using it as an energy loan shark. You want to do measures, so we talk about in the book and on my websites to get good, healthy energy instead of going for loan sharks. Number two, do you get hangry, irritable when hungry? If so, that's adrenal fatigue. And what you want to do is take a good adrenal supplement. And I recommend ones that have the glandulars, licorice, vitamin C, and they'll have a host of other things as well. So that's the irritable sugar craving. The third kind is what I call the happy Twinkie hunter. You're not irritable, you're just going through the cabinet, something sweet would be nice. And the tip off that candida is or yeast overgrowth is a likely cause is if you have nasal congestion, postnasal drip, irritable bowel syndrome, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. This is candida triggering your sugar cravings. And good probiotics, natural and other antifungals can be very helpful. And the fourth type of sugar addiction would be around perimenopause, where drops in estrogen and progesterone are triggering anxiety and depression. So, to understand how to have your sugar and get rid of the cravings, a complete guide to beating sugar addiction is very, very good. For all of you though with diabetes, I'm going to recommend a small, simple book. It's an easy read. It'll change your life. You can get on Amazon. Diabetes is optional, and it will really go through how to optimize your blood sugars and be healthy while keeping the enjoyment in your life. Remember, pleasure is good. So, to recap, diabetes is optional. Type 2 diabetes can be reversed and prevented. We talked about a program for lowering blood sugar. So, we talked about using the multivitamin with magnesium and D. We talked about the Hintonia latiflora. We talked about berberine and OPCs. All of these things make a wonderful toolkit. In terms of medications, I consider the metformin to be a good medication, and it is very synergistic with everything we just mentioned. But you have to be sure to be on the multivitamin because otherwise, metformin will cause vitamin B12 deficiency, which can aggravate the nerve pain. So you want to make sure you're taking multi with the B12 as well. Um, every single other blood sugar diabetes medicine, now insulin is good for childhood diabetics. Adult diabetics that are way out of control may need it, but what it does is it actually causes more weight gain and in the long term worsens the diabetes. It's an emergency holding action that you want to get the diabetes under control so you can get off the insulin. Otherwise, you're on a slippery slide where you notice you just put on more and more weight and the diabetes gets worse. Stop that. Stay with the insulin if your doctor puts you on it. Use these other things. Get the blood sugar down and have your doctor then wean you off the insulin. All of the other blood sugar medicines have turned out, in my 40 years experience, that once the patent runs out, then suddenly all the research comes out showing that the medication causes more harm than good. There are several new ones. We're still waiting to see if it follows the same path, but the herbals are a much safer way to go. And again, I defer to your doctor, but these herbal natural things will often help to control the blood sugar enough so that you won't need the medications. Keep white flour, white sugar, well, sugar period, white flours, white rice. Keep those refined carbohydrates to a minimum. And I also recommend there's my free phone app. It's called Cures A to Z. There's been over 1 million downloads. It's kind of like having my brain in your pocket, except a lot less messy. And it has everything from acne to zoster. You'll wonder what's going on. You just pull up the app. There's a $2 upgrade, but 80% of the information is in the free app. And you just look up what you got, and it'll tell you here's what to do. And there'll be more information on diabetes on there. Um, and again, I invite you to get my books, Diabetes is Optional, and The Complete Guide to Beating Sugar Addiction. And if you have fibromyalgia or chronic pain, my book's on that. All available on Amazon.com.